So now that we have a model exported with our texture, the next thing to do is to get that model into Unreal. But before doing anything else, to make creating a test scene a little easier, I would recommend enabling a few plugins. To do that, go to Edit, Plugins, and search for Sun, and then enable the Sun Position Calculator. Because we're going to be using the Unreal modeling tools to edit our meshes, we need to enable that plugin as well. So if you type model, you need to enable the modeling tools in editor mode. So you need to click enable that. And the next thing you'll need to do is go into your project settings and type extend. And then you want to enable extend luminance range. This just allows for the Unreal Engine to cope with the larger lighting values that the sun and sky atmosphere actor uses. One thing to bear in mind about this extended exposure range is that any previous scenes that you've created might become darker or lighter if you have this turned on. So you might need to adjust exposure settings in any previously created scenes. So once we've set those settings, what I'm going to do is create a new level. So go to File, New, and I'm going to just create an empty level. Once the empty level is created, I'm going to place a basic plane for my ground, which I'm going to reset its location and set its scale to like 100, so it's about 100 meters across. And then I'm going to add in our sun and sky actor. So you can drag that in from here. You'll see that when you add that, the exposure is going to go incredibly bright, and it takes just a second or two for it to adjust. So now that we have our test scene, the next thing to do is import our model and texture. To do that, we can go to the content browser and go to our location where we'd like to import the asset, and then click the import button. Then you navigate to where you would like to import the model from. So then all you need to do is select the assets you want to import, which in our case is our model and texture, and then we click open. This process will take a little while, so I'm going to speed it up. The first thing that will happen is the dialog box for importing the model will pop up. I would recommend making sure that Build Nanite is enabled. I would also recommend unticking Generate Light Maps, seeing as we're going to be using Lumen. And the last thing that I would normally do is set the scale to 100. This is because reality capture is in meters, whereas Unreal is actually in centimeters, so we need to convert this in order to get the right scale. So the last thing to do is to choose whether Unreal is going to automatically create a material. In my case, I'd like that to be the case, so I leave Create New Materials on, and then I click Import All. So after that process is finished, you should end up with 3 objects. One is your material, your texture, and your model. So if we have a quick look at the model, Unreal has already automatically assigned the texture and created the material and assigned that to the model. So you can see that it's came in, it looks reasonably good. We can zoom in, get reasonably good texture quality from that. So the next thing to do is drag and drop your model in the scene, and then position your camera so you can see it. I'm going to press the G key to hide the icons. Now you can see the model inside Unreal with our basic lighting setup. So now that we have our model imported into Unreal and the textures applied, it's time to create some modular meshes from this one large model. To do this, what we're going to do is enable the Unreal modeling tools. So we click this button here, and now you can see on the left hand side that you have a list of all the different options that you have inside the Unreal modeling tools. They're pretty comprehensive, and if you've used modeling software before, they'll be relatively self-explanatory. So the first modular piece I'm going to create is a door section. To do this, what I'm going to do is add a box, which you can do by clicking the box option here and dragging that into the scene. You click to commit and it'll give you another box, but I only need one, so I'll just click complete. So now that I have the box, I'd like to edit that, so I'm going to use the poly edit. So I click that, and then I select the face, and then just like normal modeling tools, you can drag this face around. So I want to drag this out to about this area here, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I'm going to take it beyond, and maybe to like this sort of natural line between the bricks, and then I'm going to extend that up right to the top because I want the full thing, and I'm going to just pull this down a little bit further just to make sure it's fully covered. So that's almost the right shape. All I need to do now is pull out the back face to make sure I encompass this last part at the side here. So that's it. So now you can see the whole box covers the wall. Now all I need to do next is to actually accept that. One thing to bear in mind about the poly edit tool is that it actually edits the mesh that you start with. So I had the box and I edited that box into this shape. It will actually save over the box and replace that with this new shape. To show you where that happens, inside your content folder you'll have a generated folder, and then inside your generated folder you'll have all the meshes that are generated. So you can see this mesh here, which is this box. It would have originally started as a box, but it's now been modified into this new shape. So just bear in mind that some tools inside the modeling tools will actually edit the original mesh. So make sure you have a backup. In order to create my first modular piece, I'm going to firstly select our original wall, and then holding Control, I'm going to select our new box object. Once we have the two objects selected, I'm going to go to Boolean and click that. So there's different types of operations, A minus B, which basically means the first object you select will have the second object removed from it. B minus A will cut the first selected object out of the second selected object. Intersect, which is what we're going to use, is going to basically remove everything outside of that box. And then union is going to join the two objects together. So we want to choose intersect. There's a lot of different options in here, a couple of quite obvious ones like fix holes is going to try and close any holes that it creates. You can use a new material where the intersection points are, but probably the most important section is down at the bottom where it tells you whether it's going to export a new asset or whether you overwrite the first input or the second input. For my case, I want to create a new asset because I want to keep the original model. If you have it on first, then it will overwrite the model you imported, and then you can choose whether you want the cube that you used to do the intersect to be deleted or to be kept and things like that. This process will take a little while, as I said, so I'm just going to pause the video and come back when it's completed. So that's process completed. It took probably about a minute or so, maybe less. You can see that we've still got our two objects selected, so if I wanted to, I could select the box object and I can move that around if I wanted to edit the shape, but in this case I'm relatively happy with what I have, so I'm just going to accept that. By clicking this accept button, it will generate the mesh and put that into the generated folder. So I click accept. So it took about 20 or 30 seconds to create that new mesh. Now we have our newly created mesh. There's a couple of things we need to do first. Firstly, what I want to do is enable Nanite on this mesh. Now there's a couple of ways to do that. One, you can right click the object and then say enable, or the other is you open up the mesh and then click enable in the Nanite settings and then click apply changes. It will take a second for it to process the mesh as it tries to convert it from a standard mesh to a Nanite mesh. So that's the process completed. We now have our Nanite mesh. So once we have our mesh converted to a Nanite mesh, in order to make it more usable as a modular piece, we need to do a few more edits. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and match the position of the ground and the wall with this side of the ground and the wall. So in order to make that easier to do, what I'm going to do is pull this object down so that I can see roughly at what height the wall ends on this side so I can match it on this side. So I'm going to move it down a little bit more to about there. In order to do this, what I'm going to use is the Lattice tool. So over here in the deform panel, you can see Lattice. If you click that, you'll see what it does is it creates a basic lattice which is 5 by 5 by 5. Now that's probably fine for this particular case, but in some other cases you might want to edit these numbers. To select any of the points to be able to move them around, you just click and drag. So it's really straightforward. And then you can use the transform tool to move these objects down. So I'm just going to quickly do that and get it to about the right position. So I'm going to just accept that. One additional thing that I wanted to point out about the Lattice tool is the interpolation type. It's currently set to linear, which is what I was using mainly, which does a linear transition between the point that you've got selected. But sometimes it's better to use the cubic function, which will do more of a curved blend, and the actual deformation is now more gradual. It fades off, whereas when you use linear, it's very angular. For the edits that I was doing, they were so small, linear was absolutely fine, but I do think cubic is probably a better option most of the time. So once Unreal's finished processing those changes, I'm just going to move this model back up so that I can see it more clearly. You notice that there's a dip below the door. I'm going to keep that in for now. I might decide later on to remove it, but I quite like it. It's got a bit of character. So it just means that when I'm working with this modular piece, I'm going to have to work around that, or I'm going to have to make a variation where this is flat or removed. The next thing I'd like to do is make this door be able to be viewed from both sides. Currently it's only one-sided, obviously because I never scanned this side. So in order to do that, what I'm going to use is the mirror tool. To use the mirror tool, you go over to the try model area and then click mirror. This is a good example actually. Sometimes when it's figuring things out, you'll see a blue lines appear, and those blue lines are useful, and they basically say that Unreal's thinking or trying to process your request. So yeah, that's something just to bear in mind. So you can see what's happening at the moment is the mirror tool is completely in the wrong place, and it's also mirroring on the wrong axes. So the axis that I want to mirror is front forward. So I want to mirror the forward side, and let's see if that does a better job, which it does. It's now more like what I'm looking for, but obviously it's too far over to the side, so I'm going to move this plane further in. Now it's a relatively quick process. I'm doing this in real time so you can see how fast it actually processes these changes. Obviously that's way too far. So one thing to bear in mind about the move tool is there is a separate option called snap to world grid. It doesn't seem to respect the snapping on and off feature here, so you have to make sure if you don't want it to snap to the world grid that you tick it off here. And then when you drag the transform, it's going to move off the world grid, which is helpful when you're trying to test where you would like it to go. So I'm just going to keep moving this until I get to a position that I like. Again, you can see the blue moving lines. That's to show that Unreal's thinking. I need to go further. I want to get that door frame in. So this isn't too bad. It's not quite right though, as you can see. So I'm just going to move it back a little bit. It's not bad, but I think I'd like to rotate it ever so slightly, just so I can get the thickness back at the bottom here. So once you're happy with your edits, then like all the other tools, all you need to do is click accept. So far we have Booleaned out the modular piece we need, we have Lattice deformed into the shape we wanted, and we've mirrored it in order to create a more solid door. One thing that you can do is go in and close any holes. To do this, go over to the poly edit and click that. Once it's loaded, change your selection type just to edges only, and then what you'll see is when you go over holes it will select them, so you can click them like that, and then you can click fill hole, and that will fill objects you selected, so you can see that that's dealt with that one. And you can work your way around and do this for the whole mesh if you wish. If you wanted, you could do this before you do the mirror, and then it means you only have to do one side, but for the purpose of what I'm doing with this, I'm not going to bother filling these holes because it's just a concept mesh, so these will be barely visible anyways. So another useful tool is the try select tool, which is underneath try model. So you click try select and wait for it to open. Once it's loaded, you'll see your mesh and the wireframe. You can obviously turn some of those settings off so that you can not show wireframe or show wireframe. The other thing is the brush size, which determines how big the brush is. There's lots of features in here, obviously you can read through them. The one that I'm going to use is I'm going to use expand to connected. So basically what I want to do is make a selection on the area that I want to keep and then go expand to connected, and what that'll do is expand out that selection to anything which is connected. You can see there's an area up here that's not, so I want to invert that, and then I would like to delete the triangles, so I click delete triangles. Once the operation is complete, you'll see the mesh without those triangles anymore. The other thing you can do, obviously if you want to tidy up the mesh further, is to just use the selection tool to select pieces that you don't that you want to remove. So I'm just going to do a really small example of that here. So you literally just click, mouse click and drag, and it selects things. If you hold shift and mouse click, then you can unselect, which is a useful way to work because it allows you to select a larger area and then remove the bits that you maybe want to keep. And then once you're happy with your selection, again you can just click delete triangles, and that will remove any auxiliary polygons. Once you're happy with your edits, all you need to do is click accept. So now we have our modular piece, and for now I'm going to leave this one at this point, and I'm going to create another modular piece from our original scan. So to do that, what I'm going to do is go back to my original scan location and drop in that wall again. I'm going to hide this for now, And what I'd like to do is create a tiling wall section. So I'm going to use exactly the same process as I did before. I'm going to use a box, and then I'm going to use a Boolean to cut out that section. So I'll speed up the next part of this video and show that process. So in order to make this a more user-friendly modular piece, what I'm going to do is try and match the size of this wall to the size of the door, so that when I use them in the scene, it will be easier for the meshes to align. So it's not miles off at the moment, but just to help push it a little bit further, make it even more user-friendly, I'm going to do similar to what I did on the door and move this down to a point where I can see the wall, and then I'm going to select the wall section. Go to Lattice, and on this case I'm going to reduce this right down to just a simple 2x2 box, and then I'm going to grab the bottom vertices, and I'm just literally going to pull this corner down to the point where it's roughly the same position as this side. I think the height should be fine, but if I need to edit that later I can do so, and then I'm just going to click accept. So you can see already that it's doing a reasonably good job of blending these two meshes, even though they are in no way tiling meshes. And that's partly down to the noise and complexity of the asset, but it's also down to the fact that because you have so many polygons now, when you intersect objects, they actually create these quite nice shapes because of the amount of polygons that are intersecting each other. In previous games in old generations, you'd have much clearer lines, polygon lines, sharp lines running through the intersections. So having the extra polygons really helps with this problem. So what I'm going to do is test the mesh on both sides just to make sure that it works, and as you can see, the height of the mesh is quite a bit higher. So in order to fix that, what I'm actually going to do is do another lattice and just pull the top down as well, just to make it a little bit more user friendly, as I was saying. So maybe we go off a little. Let's accept that. There's a little bit of an intersection, but it's a tiny amount. I don't think that'll cause any problems. So now that we have the object aligned in terms of its rough height is reasonably consistent between both sides of the mesh, what we can do to help make the intersections even neater, we can use the lattice deform on both mesh pieces and just push in the sides to allow for better intersection. So the way I do this is choose lattice again, and then pick the right axis, which I think should be the y-axis, but I'm going to make it really large, large number, because I'm only wanting to move the very last part of this wall. So I'm going to select it like so, and I'm going to just move it in a tiny amount. So I'm just creating like a curve on the ends, which when you intersect with two meshes you'll not really ever see that curve, but what it will allow is for you to get away from having any gaps or anything like that in between your two modular pieces. So when I'm happy with that, I'll accept it. Now that those changes are accepted, if I move this mesh out, you can see that it's intersecting quite nicely with the other wall, especially if I push it over. You can see where it's intersecting, and we're not getting any like seams or edges. But in order to further improve this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also do the same thing to this modular piece, just so that they're both tapered in slightly. So that's the operations completed. Now I'm just going to test out the meshes and see how well they work as a modular set. So as you can see, it works reasonably well. There is some color variation issues. So this could be obviously fixed in the texture, or in some cases it can look like it's maybe been brick that's been replaced and it's got a slightly different tone. But this is an easy thing to fix outside Unreal if you decide that that is an issue for your particular scene. On reflection, I feel like these are a little bit low on this side, so I think what I would do is just do one more lattice with 2 in the settings, and just move this up slightly on this one side, just because I feel like the offset between the 2 sides is causing an issue. So once I accept that, it'll update on both sides. So now you can see that's the mesh is all updated and ready to be used as modular sections. And the other thing you can do is extend the wall. Again, you can see this little nick in the corner. I think I might change that later, but for now it's fine. You can see obviously we're getting a bit of tile, so what would be nice is to have another wall section that we can use to help mix this up more. So I'm going to pause the video now, and I'm going to create a whole bunch more modular meshes using exactly the same processes that I've just shown you here just now. So you can see on the screen all the different pieces that I created as modular meshes. All of these meshes work quite well together. Let's just go with that for now. So yeah, you can see that works well, and you can extend this wall now. This section I made from, let me show you the original. I basically had a section where I had top of the wall, so I made a small modular mesh from that also curves in at the bottom, so I can intersect that nicely with the wall and create wall topped areas that you can see. And you can clone that along and like flip it around and you know, intersect it and stuff. It's a relatively flexible mesh. So I mean, that's generally what you're trying to do with modular meshes, is try and create something that's as flexible as possible so you can get as much use out of it as possible, really. So yeah, as you can see now, we have a wall that's got a wall top on it rather than a hole like this. Even though I've created these meshes, what I'd quite like to do next is create a few more meshes from these meshes to be able to have like a turret and things like that. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is make a duplicate of this mesh. So I've actually already done this, but I'll show you. So this is, so if I go to browse to asset, you see the mesh here. I've just duplicated it, so I've literally right clicked, duplicate, and that's created another version of it. So then I can drop that into the scene that you can see here. What you can do inside the modeling tools is you can deform objects. So if you go into the deform tab and then click warp, then you can basically bend and deform objects. So for this, I want to do a 180-degree bend because I want it to be half of a turret, and literally that is about all I need to do to that, and then just click accept. So now you can see it's created a nice curved turret style mesh. To make this even more usable, what I'm going to do is remove the grass and dirt from the bottom of this wall. So there's lots of ways you could do that. You could use a Boolean to cut it out, but I'm just going to very quickly select it using the try select feature that I showed before. And then all I'm going to do is paint where I want to be removed. So I'm just going to do this really rough, but it'll show you how you can use this feature. I don't need it to be very accurate because, much like the other meshes, I'm going to intersect them anyway, so it should be relatively easy to make them blend nicely with the intersection. So once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to click delete triangles, and now you'll see that I've got this and this, so I'll just select any part and expand to connected, and then I'll invert, and then I can delete that as well. So what you can see here now is the final curved turret style mesh. There's a couple of things that I'd quite like to do to improve it. One of them is to create a curved topper as well. So in order to do that, I'll use exactly the same process before. So as you can see, that's the wall topper mesh that I've created. Just allows me to be able to add thickness to the top of the wall as well, and it works reasonably well blending between the two meshes. There's a bit of a shade difference, but that's something we could again tweak in the texture if it was a problem. So what you can see on screen here is all the meshes that I've created. I've created a turret mesh, a turret curved top mesh, a wall topper mesh, a longer wall section, a shorter wall section, and a door section. So hopefully you can see that using Unreal modeling tools can be a great way to make quick concept modular meshes for use in all sorts of environments, like the one shown on screen now. There's so many other workflow opportunities with Unreal modeling tools. I hope to create some more videos showing different workflows. If you would like to see those, then please give me a follow on Artstation or any of the other places shown above. Thanks for watching this video. I look forward to seeing all the cool environments that you create.